Dear class, good morning. Oh, how wonderful it is to have the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you thinking about Anton Chekhov's great masterpiece, Three Sisters. Uh, who else would allow me to do this except you? So here we are back in Chekhov's familiar world, a world of provincial Russia and a world of thwarted lives and disappointed loves. Irina is never going to find love, the youngest sister, it seems, and then it seems as if she has found something which would be a home, a marriage, but alas, in Chekhov, very few paths run straight. Masha, the middle sister, a romantic creature, has a passionate affair, which perhaps is as much as any of us in our most romantic souls can wish for, and which Masha achieves. But more than that, not. And Olga, the oldest responsible sister, winds up going out to work. A terrible fate for once well-to-do family, the Prozorovs, who now must join in Russian society. And this is definitely a move forwards in Chekhov's view. So here they are, battling with their disappointments and their dreams. As always in Chekhov, there are unfulfilled dreams are the most common of themes, and don't we all have them? They also spend time philosophizing, sitting around and thinking, what will they think of us in the future as they look back at us? A common Chekhovian theme, a very Russian thing to be doing, sitting around and philosophizing. And there are so many delicious things that happen in the play that belong to Chekhov's unique capacity to attend to the absurdity of human behavior in all its detail. A wonderful conversation between two obstinate and self-willed and peculiar creatures, Solyoni, the rather terrifying soldier who is madly in love with Irina, and Chebutikin, the doctor, who may, if you look very closely at the play, have his own reasons for loving little Irina too. There are so many curious things that happen in the play that connect him to Irina, the toys he insists on keeping on bringing her. And if you follow him carefully, separating his thread out from the rest of the play, through the play, you will see that there's something quite noteworthy and remarkable which culminates in his indifference to the tragedy that befalls Irina at the end of the play, which leaves him saying, nothing matters, nothing's important, nothing matters at all, which so offends some directors of the play. They think, but no, wait, we don't want somebody on stage saying nothing matters. For goodness sake, we've got the audience all worked up to a pitch of emotion, and now you're going to have somebody saying nothing matters? We can't have that. And they cut the lines. But of course, the most Chekhovian thing about the very ending is the doctor exclaiming, who cares? And that, as I've spoken to you in connection with the very end of Uncle Vanya, is either a complete deflation of all a reader or an audience's sentimental hopes, or, if you're me, an exaltation of the richness of life, just as sad, in fact much sadder than a Hollywood version of life, or a Hollywood version of Chekhov, which is what you very often see on stage. Chekhov is at pains to show that as much as our tragedies obsess us and take the foreground of our lives. The world doesn't care. The world is there in the form of the doctor, saying, doesn't matter. But what I'm drawing your attention to is, does the doctor have a particular reason for saying doesn't matter? Is he not perhaps deeply envious of the person who is about, or was about, to take Irina away from his life, although as a departing member of the regiment it's quite possible that she would no longer have been in his life anyway, but to replace him, replace the role that he wants to have in her life, not as a lover. No, the question is, who exactly was Irina's father? The last of the Prozorov children. There are a number of hints dropped by Chebutikin, who is often understood to be just fantasizing, but wrongly, I think, as to the affair that he may have had with their beloved mother. That changes the whole story. It's the most buried of all the threads in Chekhov's work, so buried that almost everybody who has read and loved and performed the play has completely failed to notice it. Once you notice it, you can't keep away from it. So there's the doctor, another doctor who, like Dr. Astroff, is haunted by the man who died on the operating table, as doctors have always been, and I guess particularly in the 19th century, when this play was conceived, when Chekhov was a doctor and anesthetic methods were much less reliable and sophisticated than they are today. So, interestingly, he's haunted by the same fears, the same memories that Astroff is, and in many ways he's another version of Astroff, a man who says, I've forgotten all I ever knew, I'm just a useless waste of space. He's an irritable, disappointed old codger, but he hangs around the Prozorov family, and if you read the play carefully, you may well work out why. I haven't asked it as a quiz question because it requires an awfully close reading. So I was going to mention a perfect moment of instance of Chekhov's careful observation of the absurdity of human behavior, which occurs when Chebutikin and Solioni have an argument in which they're not talking about the same thing at all. And Chebutikin comes in talking, in fact, to Irina, reminiscing to her, as he can often be found to do. And he says, and the food, too, was real Caucasian stuff. Onion soup, and for the meat course, chehartma. And Solioni, who's furious, actually, to see Chebutikin taking up Irina's time, which is what he wants to do. And it's only when you probe under the surface of what's happening on stage in Chekhov that you understand how many layers and levels there are to his writing. Solioni comes in not by chance and interrupts and says, Cheremsha is not meat at all. It's a plant, rather like our onion. And Chebutikin says, no, my dear fellow, it's not onion, but mutton, roasted in a special way. But I tell you that Cheremsha is an onion, and I tell you that Chehartma is mutton, and I tell you that Cheremsha is an onion. What's the use of arguing with you? You've never been to the Caucasus or eaten Chehartma. I haven't eaten it because I can't stand it. Cheremsha smells like garlic. And Andrei says, oh, please stop, please. And nobody notices, neither of them notice, that they're talking about two different things, Chehartma and Cheremsha. So I'm sure this is grounded in an incident that Chekhov must have seen, or seen many times maybe, of people having an argument, whether or not that they actually aren't listening to each other sufficiently to see they're talking about two separate things. Not that he would need to have observed an exchange like this to have written it. It would speak to his sense of the farce of human behavior to invent this. But such such arguments take place literally and, of course, metaphorically all the time, where people are constantly arguing furiously about two quite different things without noticing. So that is Soglioni and Cevutikin for you. And that roused in me a memory of some part of the play which I've now gone and forgotten. So this is as great a play, I think, as Uncle Vanya, more complex because of all the characters in it, of the rich patterning of it, and the extraordinary fire act. Each of Chekhov's great four-act plays has one act, usually the third, sometimes the second, which changes the location, often taking you outdoors, as in the Cherry Orchard. But in this play, changing the whole ecology of the stage setting by introducing an offstage event which lends greatly to the lighting of that particular act and allows people to get away into corners to have conversations like Masha and Vashinin, which others may not hear. A great deal of coming and going and all the drama of the offstage fire. And then above all, the final act, with its terrible outcome and its dreadful intimations of finality and death in the very departure of the regiment, which has brought life to this mid-size provincial town. Perm, it's been suggested, was the model for it. And if you've got a regiment in your town, then you're going to have a huge amount of social life which will disappear as soon as they leave. And for three attractive women, this is a disaster. They've really got to go to Moscow, and quickly too. Not that Moscow will necessarily supply any of their dreams, because dreams in Chekhov are very hard to fulfill, and it's human nature not to have your dreams fulfilled, but to have to adjust, as all his characters do, more or less, and that is, if you want to inspect its status as tragedy, that is the tragedy of the ordinary man as against the tragedy of the depths of the human soul in all its murderousness that the Greeks were concerned with looking at, so that we're prepared for that part of us, the demon, the beast in ourselves. Whereas Chekhov, rather like Freud, saying that he just wanted to not to make people happy who were distraught and miserable, but to acclimatize them to ordinary unhappiness, everyday unhappiness. And this is very much Chekhov's labor as well. And perhaps the turn of the 20th century was just such a time before the First World War addressed us once more to tragedy of a kind that the century hardly had recovered from before the Second War upped the stakes. Freud, of course, lived through the first one and died in 1939 on the very verge of the second. But he nonetheless was concerned with everyday patients, just as Chekhov is concerned with an everyday world in need of comfort, as we all are, and in need of a guide to adjustment and acceptance, and a reminder that pretty much everybody else is having to adjust to the same limitation on their dreams and ambitions. So enough for the moment. I may come back to you with more. It's a great pleasure to know that you're there. Please stay safe. All the very best. Bye now.